All right, Mindcrafters. Welcome to the Minecraft podcast. My name is Dr. Kimberly Quinn, and it is TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. And I'll tell you, this is my thing now. On Fridays, a full-length podcast inspired by my oldest son, Ryan, who's asking, saying, Mom, like, what happened? Where's the podcast? You have all these little reels and everything, and that's great, but like, where's the podcast? Well, it's back. And so Fridays, you have this to look forward to. Wednesdays, I'm going to try to be consistent each and every Wednesday with guest speakers too. So anyway, TGIF, here it goes. What I'd like to talk about today is becoming aware of the upper limit problem, or your ULP. We all have an ULP. Even the most happy and successful people have a sort of self-imposed glass ceiling, which means we're only going to be or allow ourselves to be as happy as we feel we deserve. That is just the fact, Jack. And I love saying that. It's so much fun. So on the flip side of that, though, when we grow up with any kind of dysfunction, addiction, shame-based messaging, all that good stuff, as you know I did if you've heard, all the backstory stuff, it can take a long time to work through that. And here's the thing, it is unconscious. So we do this self-imposed upper limit problem, or ULP, or glass ceiling, because we've been conditioned to think that we aren't worthy. That's one of the biggest reasons for an ULP to stay active. And it's really important to understand that we do have this unconscious glass ceiling, because that means that the ULP is not going to be fixed by just cruising around on autopilot. We've got to bring that into consciousness, because we can't do what we don't know. We cannot do what we're not aware of. That's just how it is. So now we're going to bring that into consciousness, because here's the thing. I did make some notes, because actually, what I need to do is show you the book. I've literally read The Big Leap about 1,000 times, maybe a minor exaggeration, but lots and lots of times, by Gay Hendricks. And I read certain chapters over and over and over again. And one that I read over and over again is The Zone of Genius. We'll get to there in a little bit. So here's the thing. I love when Gay says, if I argue for my limitations, Giovanni just piped in over there. Can you see him on the floor? Little golden retriever. When we argue for our limitations, when I argue for my limitations, guess what? I get to keep them. And I would usually say, isn't that great if it were something positive? But that's not great, because we don't have to have those limitations. They're all self-imposed. And so here's the thing. The upper limit problem, what I say, is the only one we really need to solve. And this is part of, this is what I wanted to say. Because here's the thing, it's unconscious, and when we really start to get the flow going with the positive energy, when we've got that conditioning that says, oh, wait, you're starting to be way too happy, or your bank account is way too, getting way too fat, or, this relationship is going way too well, reel it in, and that's when we throw a wrench into our own, lives, because of that blocker there. So what I wanted to I think I'm just going straight to the horse here. So the upper limit problem and how it works, once I sort of read this from Gay Hendricks, this quick little thing, we're going to talk about it as it relates to relationships, to careers, and to money. And there obviously you can have it in a gamut of other ways, but those are probably the three biggest ones where we self-sabotage when we're feeling too good. So how does the upper limit problem work? Well, I'm going to tell you here, because Gay Hendricks says each of us has an inner thermostat. So we're talking about the happiness set point, right? Setting that determines how much love, success, and creativity we allow ourselves to enjoy. When we exceed our inner thermostat setting, we will often do something to sabotage ourselves, causing us to drop back into the old familiar zone where we feel secure. Okay, so again, the top three are, say, our relationships, money, and what was the other one I just said? Relationships, money, career, also fitness regimens, all that. So let's just think of the relationship one for a second. If somebody has had a childhood where they didn't get, the love they had, enough love that they needed, there might have been some big stuff there, like abuse. And it doesn't have to be all this big stuff. There's a whole range of, smaller stuff to bigger stuff. But the whole point is that we get conditioned. And so if somebody really grew up in a dysfunctional home, as you know I did, a lot of turbulence, some violence, as addiction, violence, mental illness, all that kind of thing. We get conditioned to looking for the good feels outside of us and all that other stuff. So here, fast forward to adulthood, and maybe you weren't used to being treated well, so you continue to look for people who don't treat you well. And so now you find, Mr. Right or Mrs. Right, your prince or princess in shining armor walking in, and they're just this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful human being who's worthy of your trust, and you're feeling happy. But like all of a sudden, whoa, that's totally uncomfortable for me. Again, this is unconscious. We're not saying, gee, I feel so great. Why don't I throw a wrench in it and ruin it? No, this is all unconscious because, again, the brain loves patterns. So when we are used to a certain pattern, which has been conditioned and, remember, unconscious for years and years and years and years, the brain's like, I know what to do. The brain's trying to please us. I know what to do. We can find that other jerk that's going to walk in again after we broke up with the last one, just wearing a different outfit, right? We can keep doing that until we do the work on ourselves and figure out what that is. So along comes this wonderful person, and he, she, or they're absolutely amazing. And unconsciously, though, you start to feel like, wow, this isn't comfortable. I'm so happy. And what do we do? Somebody might completely ruin it and break up with that person. That's like the ultimate self-sabotage in that situation, right? I'm going to beat you to the punch because I know that this is eventually going to explode. I'm going to go back to my happiness set point because in my head, my hard drive is telling me I only deserve to be this happy. And it's way down low here. I'm going to revert right back to that because this doesn't match up with what I am used to. Right? Or they may not do a full breakup, but they may start to blame the other person, to question them, to say things about, distrust that when this person hasn't shown any indication you can't trust them. Or you might just start arguments because that's just a relationship example because no matter what, here's the facts. We can only be as happy. Here's the levels, right? Here's really low bar for happiness. And here's through the ceiling, dancing at the top of Mount Everest, got the world by the ass, loving life, right? Well, here's the thing. We can only be as happy as we believe we deserve. So it can't just be thoughts, and we know that thoughts dictate feelings. That's huge in Minecraft, right? About becoming the boss of our brain. So to think all these thoughts is a good start, but here's the thing. When thoughts grow up, they become beliefs. And so beliefs are what we're talking about, and then beliefs eventually lead to a sense of knowing, really knowing. And that's when you've done a full reboot on the hard drive. So we can only be as happy as we believe we deserve, which turns into that we know we deserve. Okay, so that is what we're talking about here. So in the rest case says, unfortunately, our thermostat setting usually gets programmed in early childhood before we can think for ourselves. Once programmed, our upper limit thermostat setting holds us back from enjoying all the love, financial abundance, we're going to talk about that soon, and creativity that's rightfully ours. It keeps us in our zone of competence, or at our best, our zone of excellence. It prevents us from living in the ultimate destination of our journey, the zone of genius. So I'm going to stop right there because he talks about this later, but I want it to make sense to you. So there are 4 zones, according to Gay Hendricks, and they are in an order from the bottom up being the zone of genius, the top tier. So we've got, first of all, the zone of incompetence. That's all the stuff we're not good at. This is why, personally, we hire plumbers when the sink breaks. My husband, God love him, put the thing on backwards one time, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. So plumbing, good example for us. Call the plumber, right? The competence level is sort of a really broad one. It's things we can do, but so can other people. Let's say, cleaning, fixing certain things that don't involve certifications, like plumbing or electricity or things like that, but that we can, that other people can do. You can delegate. Let's say you're in a business like me, we've got social media stuff. Other people can do some of it, postings. You don't have to do all of that. In fact, actually, we're going to get to that. No, we'll get to that now. I have a friend in my mastermind group. I'm in a wonderful mastermind group. They're just amazing, down-to-earth, authentic, just oozing of authenticity, very successful people. And one of my friends, Jarrett, says, do the best you can to do only what only you can do, all right? So that's kind of what we're getting at. So here's the zone of incompetence, stuff we're not good at. Zone of competence, things we're good at. Cleaning is a good example, but so can lots of other people, or landscaping, or whatever. Obviously, some people may do that better than you, but we can all do it enough, I guess is what we're saying. And then there's a zone of excellence. So for me, that would be teaching, I would say, because the zone of excellence is actually can be, it's interesting because it's very paradoxical. The zone of excellence can keep us trapped because it's so good. So, I love teaching. I feel like I was put on this earth to teach and educate and things like that. I've absolutely loved it. I'm still doing it part-time because I'm doing all this now. Absolutely loved it. But if you're not careful, your zone of excellence can keep you stuck, meaning just away from the zone of genius. Doesn't mean you're not pretty happy, making a bunch of money, maybe getting tons of kudos because, you're good at what you do. Like, again, for me, it was teaching. I had the amazing honor of receiving the Teaching and Excellence Award one year at Champlain College, which, they give to one faculty, per year. Is a huge honor. And it was, so it can be like, we're getting all this good stuff is happening. You're making a decent salary. People are saying good things to you, all of that. And that's good for a while. You want to reside there for a while. Then up here is the zone of genius. And that is something that, is an amazing, amazing feeling when you tap into that. So it's easy to see how we can kind of remain here because it feels so good. But there's something more waiting for you, and you know that because you can just feel the itch. Whether it's writing that book, whether it's starting that business, whether it's travel, whether it's inventing, like completely innovating something, you can just see that something's not working out in the world. And you're like, man, I wonder if I just created this, whatever this thing is, would be so much easier for people. But then you go back to your zone of excellence, you just stay in that comfortable spot, and then somebody else ends up inventing the thing, like those little plastic things on the end of shoelaces. They probably have a name, I don't know, but whoever invented that's probably a gazillionaire. Anyway, all right, so those are the four zones: incompetence, competence, excellence, and zone of genius. The zone of genius chapter, I was telling you, I read some of these chapters over and over again, and that's one of them. The other one is Einstein time, but we'll talk about that in another time. Okay, so how the upper limit problem works. Where do we leave off here? Okay, ultimate destination of the journey, our zone of genius. Next, he says we'll explore these zones in more detail later in the chapter. I just kind of told you what they were. But for now, though, what you need to know is this. If you make a spectacular leap in one area of your life, such as money, your upper limit problem quickly enshrouds you in a wet wool blanket of guilt that keeps you from enjoying your new abundance. Guilt is a way our minds have of applying a painful grip on the conduit through which our feelings flow. So this is really, really important because for some people, this is going to be extreme, some people less extreme, and some people just a little bit. And Gay in his books talks about different people. I'm sure most of you would know. Some of them you wouldn't. He just kind of describes them as leaders, CEOs of companies and whatever. Some of them are people gave him permission. One of them was Bonnie Raitt, actually. She soared. She was stuck for a while and different things happening in her life that she struggled with, and then so here's the thing, so here's the questions you got to ask yourself here. And I made a little note to myself, so I do write by Gay Hendricks. Am I willing to feel good and love? Am I willing to feel good and have my life go well all of the time, as much of the time as possible? We got to get into that place that, yes, I'm not just going to revert back to. And I think this actually, people that have a little bit of a higher set point, I think are maybe possibly more apt to be stuck because it is so subtle. And now the money example, I've got a friend who did a podcast, Michelle Ogston, you can look it up. She's on that if you go back through, not that long ago. It was this year, and probably, I don't know, 6 months ago maybe or less. Anyway, she talks about how we are so programmed to only hold so much money. And this really hit me because those of you who listen to my previous podcast, my big struggle, which is completely stemming from shame from my childhood. I'm not saying that with blame. I'm just explaining because I'm way past that. It's just, I like to share, my own struggle because it'll hopefully help be very relatable for someone else, that may be the stepping stone they need to kind of, or springboard to jump into their own self-discovery. So I grew up with a ton of addiction and, violence and mental illness and narcissism stuff. And so I realized later on that, like most of us do, when we look back, I did everything but like rub myself out. And I realized a lot of it was from these harmful messages. My own mother told me at one point she wished I wasn't born, and that's a heavy duty one. And I realized in my 20s, and it was complicated. It's not just one thing. I also am a Fast Mind Club member, also known as ADHD, but much more positive to say Fast Mind Club. There was some impulsivity there too, so it's kind of complicated. But when you hear things like that, they're in constant shame, people trying to rub you out, you eventually learn to try to rub yourself out. And that's a common money thing, actually. There's a book by Susan Forward called Toxic Parent. That's a little resource for you. If any of you have any of the issues that are kind of similar to what I went through, I should say, going through, because I'm really like way far out of that now. Though I want to say the quizzes come every once in a while just to keep me in line and make sure, I'm on the right path, which is humbling, and also I'm grateful because it keeps me, in tune with my purpose and my authentic self. But she talks about that in there when small children are given really toxic messages and really, really bad toxic mirroring, that financially is one of the ways they try to rub themselves out. And sadly, some people actually take their lives. But as far as that, so that's a way where I self-imposed early on a glass ceiling way back earlier as a child, but then it started to show up when you start to make money, right? As a young adult, I had imposed a glass ceiling on me that was a glass layer of granite, more granite, and finally healed all that inside stuff in my hard drive, healed all that. And that's been old news for decades now. But I'm sharing that with you again because I think it's so relatable that Gay talks about it too. So he talks about relationships, money, also fitness. He talks about his own thing with a glass ceiling around, he struggled with weight, and I don't remember the number of pounds, but he lost an insane amount of weight, not like 10 or 20, like big weight. And so he'd be doing well, eating well, and exercising, and being out in nature, doing all the things. And then all of a sudden, this feels too good. I'm getting all these compliments. I'm feeling good. Maybe the dating life, I'm saying in general now, maybe the dating life is improving. You get all this positive stuff, mostly from the inside out, that you're feeling so good. And then, people who often feel this good go on a binge, and it just does this like snowball thing, and it blows up again, because that's an ULP. That's an upper limit problem ULP. All my money stuff I explained to you is an upper limit problem, the ULPs. And the ULPs kept going. They just looked differently. As I started to heal, the big stuff was a little more obvious, like don't spend recklessly, shopping, whatever. And it got to a point where it wasn't as extreme as that. It became more subtle. When, I'm starting to really, this is maybe, I don't know, a couple decades ago or whatever, started to actually save money. And in my head, I'm like, can it be, I'm just making this number up, can it be more than 5,000? And slowly I'm like, okay. And I would tell myself, I'm going to feel good for a while longer. I'm going to feel good for a while longer. And I still do that. And I actually use one of the mantras that Gay Hendricks has in here in my early morning routine, which begins with saying thank you out that bay window right over there. You can't see it, it's around the corner. And after I do that, actually, 3 things I am grateful for every day in my life, and that sits right there on this coffee table, so I don't miss it ever. And then I head to the woods with little Giovanni, who's laying on the floor over there, catching his snooze. We go in the woods. I have my own little prayer routine, and I set an intention. But all this stuff takes less than 3 minutes, literally. Then out the door. And so where I'm going with this is I'll say, the Gay Hendricks kind of mantra is, he says like this. I just move the 3 words around because I prefer to say love first. So I expand in love, abundance, and success as I inspire others to do so as well. And then I say it 3 times in a row. So just positive affirmation. And I had a talk with myself, actually, after I had Michelle. I told you about my mastermind friend who talks about, and she does all kinds of work on that. You can reach out to me if you want to know her, because I have her info someplace. You could probably just look her up on LinkedIn. Michelle Ogston, Ogston. Anyway, I thought about it, this realization. I've come miles with the money thing. Miles. It's been, say, at least a couple of decades. And when I interviewed her about that, I thought, wow, I think I even said it to her, actually. I said, this is so freaking cool, because what she was talking about, being able to hold a certain amount of money, whether it's 5,000 or 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, whatever, that sometimes even when we're doing really well, like, I've spent years of me working on my hard drive. I've done so much work on myself. I'm in a really, really good place, super comfortable in my skin. This still was the universe, or God, however you want to say, higher power, talking to me, saying, you can keep expanding, because you can have an ULP. You can have an ULP. Okay, we can hold more than 5, 10, or whatever it is. So these are all examples of the upper limit problem. And it's really, really important, no matter where you are in the continuum with that, whether it's, severe and kind of inviting not the best people into your life to not treat you well and things like that, that's on this end, whether it's more the middle, or whether you've done a ton of work on yourself and you're getting kind of reminders, because the life, and my dear friend Oprah says this a lot, we're very good friends, she just isn't aware. She also says, listen to the whispers so they don't turn into bricks, which also kind of goes along with this listening. But she talks about how life continues to send us quizzes. So even, let's say, the quiz is worth 10, like my physics quizzes in high school with Mr. Circo, a 10 out of 10 is obviously an A. A 9.2 is obviously a 92. Well, the universe is going to keep giving you quizzes until you get that 10 out of 10. So even if you're doing really, really well, like I've done all this healing with my relationship with money, worked through the shame, rebooted the hard drive over and over and over again, done so much work, you can get a 9.8 and be moving along, doing well, doing YouTube talks, influencing, doing workshops, working with people, and then a little bit of time will go by and bang, higher power, God, universe sends you another quiz, because you still got that 2% to go. And that's just how it is. So that's how the upper limit problem works. And it's really, really important for you to be aware of your own upper limit problem, or an ULP. I actually say that word now, and Gay talks about, remember, that's the big leap. Gay talks about how he did a conference someplace with executives, and he didn't nickname it ULP, even though that's obviously the acronym from the first letters. Somebody in the group started saying, oh, I just had an ULP, an aha ULP moment. Well, I do that too now, because I'm like, oh my gosh. And the more you become aware of it, the more you can figure it out. And there are all kinds of ways, we mentioned some of them, to realize it's an ULP. Blaming, criticizing, arguing, especially if it's a relationship thing. Overt, like with the money thing, overt things like you were doing all the savings and now you're in the red because you just overspent, you spent recklessly, or you missed out on you're saying, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot to make that phone call, for that person that offered me this opportunity. You probably didn't just forget. That's the brain saying, nope, no more opportunity for you, because you only think you're worthy of this much. And you'll think you just forgot it, but you didn't just forget it. That was passive decision making that was unconscious. And that's why you blew it. You blew it because the brain is used to you blowing it in that way, because the brain is used to you only allowing this much happiness. That's how it works. And another way, when the positive energy is trying to flow, think of it like a clogged pipe. I'm actually looking at my sink over there. Thinking of a clogged pipe, we tend to stick a big fat pebble or clog something that's, that when that flow, that positive energy of prosperity and success and all the good feels that come with living your purpose, which is all the authentic good feels, which often brings money with it, right? Do what you love and the money will follow. That's how it works. I forget who wrote that, but it was back in the 80s, or I don't know. And so that clog is there. Maybe it's partially clogged, so only this much positive energy is flowing through. But that's when the upper limit's like, whoa, grab onto her. She's feeling too happy. Okay, so the best way to handle that is to first become aware. Another big one, and there are other ways, which in Gay's book that he talks about recognizing because it may not be obvious to you at first that that's what's happening. And one of the biggies is worrying. You got some good thing coming up, and and I'm not talking about, if you're going on, like I just did 3 speaking gigs in a row, and like a week and a half ago, and it's obviously it's really kind of common to be excited, but if you're getting really worked up and nervous, that can be the sign that you have an ULP happening, because that gets in the way. All that nervous energy gets in the way of the positive flow through your own pipe, let's say, just flowing, and it's trying to clog it up. Okay, so there's more than that, but I try to cap it at 30 minutes or less. That's a good distance for people to listen on the way into work or whatever. So TGIF, thank you for listening to the Mindcraft Special Edition. Thank goodness, thank God it's Friday podcast. Have an awesome day.